You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Just because I walk as if I have oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my sassiness upset you? Don't take it so hard just because I laugh, as if I have gold mines digging in my own backyard. You can shoot me with your words, you can cut me with your lies, you can kill me with your hatefulness, but just like life, I rise. Does my sexiness offend you? Oh. Does it come as a surprise that I dance as if I have diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame I rise. Up from a past rooted in pain I rise. A black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling and bearing in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear I rise. Into a daybreak miraculously clear I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the hope and the dream of the slave. And so, wow. There I go.
I just have to say, wasn't that wonderful? I really, this just really gets to you. So anyway, that's it.
Ann, thank you so much for bringing that to us. That was lovely. Thank you.
Penny Dex served in the Army from 2004 to 2008 as a pharmacy specialist, seeing firsthand the true cost of war. She has since worked with multiple veterans groups, including Iraq Veterans Against the War and Veterans for Peace. During her military service under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, she repeatedly encountered a feeling of being labeled other, never quite fitting in or being accepted due to her gender and orientation. Thus, one of her first projects as a veteran was establishing Minority Veterans of America, ensuring that all veteran stories are recognized and honored. The veteran demographic is plagued by suicide, post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury, military sexual assault, moral injury, and survivor's guilt. Ms. Dex, who is working toward a degree at Portland State in biology and psychology, has found in her research that horticulture therapy has been employed for soldiers since Roman times, and that farming programs in the U.S. have the highest rates of giving veterans a just transition from military to civilian life. She helped develop the first veteran-taught permaculture course in the U.S., Boots to Roots, and is currently president of Vets Cafe, the Veterans Ecological Trades Collective, helping veterans transition to productive lives through permaculture. Would you welcome Penny Dex?
As my wonderful introduction and Helen said, thank you very much. My name is Penny Dex. I served in the U.S. military from 2004-2008 as a pharmacy specialist at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. My job, this is who I am, this is my journey from the pharmacy there to the pharmacy I run now up in Rochester, Washington. And at 19, I joined, this is my only surviving military photo. Unfortunately, it's from an old driver's license because, long story short, things got lost in the move. But I joined the military at 19 because I wanted to make tangible, concrete differences in people's lives. I wanted to have a skill that I could take in the civilian workforce, and once again, as a pharmacy tech, I was able to be the last stop in the hospital. After surgery, after seeing all the doctors, I was the person giving you your pain pills or your anti-anxiety meds or whatever you needed to go home and be able to be with your kids and be with your family and get better. And joining the military as a pharmacy tech, no other woman in my family had joined, and I was in Onalaska, Washington at the time, which is 40 miles away from Chehalis, Washington, which is where the Walmart was at, where I tried to get a pharmacy job. And after Walmart asked me what I heard about Walmart in the news, I said, well, I heard you don't like unions. And then I was banned from ever applying for a job at Walmart again. So I got blacklisted, and as I sat in the parking lot going, what am I going to do? I see that billboard right there that says Army of One. So I walk into my recruiter's office, decide this is what I'm going to do. People are always going to be sick. I'm always going to be able to, find a job. I'm always going to be able to help people. It's not a bad place to be. But as I started doing my pharmacy work in the hospital and did everything from inpatient, outpatient, retail pharmacy, I made IVs for premature babies. I took care of quadriplegics that were coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. And the more I talked to combat vets, the more I gave them their Percocet and their Ambien and their Ativan and their Xanax and everything else, instead of asking questions like, or instead of telling them things like, take this every 8 hours, or, make sure you don't drink alcohol with this. I would see them doing all the things I told them not to do with their pills. And they ended up with DUIs and domestic violence issues and getting arrested for assault and things like that while on my pills. And so I started asking more questions like, why can't you sleep at night? And why are fireworks upsetting you? And why can't you be around your kids anymore? And stuff like that without these pills. And then I kept hearing the same story over and over and over again, where I joined to do something good. I got there, I found out that those people have women and children too, and the wives and kids and everything else. I found out I wasn't doing the right thing. I come back, everyone's telling me that I did, and now I'm having a lot of problems. And that's when I found out about things like post-traumatic stress syndrome, traumatic brain injury, military sexual assault, all the things that lead veterans to have the suicide rate of 22 a day. And active duty members take their lives every 36 hours, like especially right now with our deployments and our administration, veteran suicides are at an all-time high. So once again, I was asking myself, like, if I couldn't be the person in the hospital or wearing the uniform making a tangible, concrete difference in someone's life that didn't end up with them being back in the hospital or in jail or worse, then what do I actually want to do? Okay. So when I got out, I tried going back for my pharmacy degree. I tried just going to Portland State University and getting through all that. I'm currently on hiatus because of my post-traumatic stress and everything. It turns out that I couldn't be on campus alone by myself at night with people going around me. I couldn't be in classrooms with lots of men at a time because my military trauma revolved around military sexual assault, and it caused a lot of problems in my life. I ended up with a lot of self-medicating. I was drinking heavily. Like, I didn't understand that a double meant 2 shots at once, so 8 gin and tonics at a double a day is not good for anybody. I ended up, my disability money or my GI Bill money did not come correctly because my VSO messed up my paperwork, so I did not get my money until the end of finals for going the whole course of school. I ended up in my car sleeping there for about 2 weeks before other veterans took me in, and that's how I found Iraq Veterans Against the War and Veterans for Peace. And with them, I thought I really had this purpose. I really thought that we could bridge, if we just told people the true cost of war, if we just showed them the facts, if we just had people actually share their, like Winter Soldier, actually share their stories and tell people what happened there, then, war would end. Because if we knew the truth, right, then we would just stop doing these things. And that was a 10-year trip and a rude awakening into you can have all the facts and you can be right and you can have all the graphs. And people are just like, well, war just always needs to happen. Earth will always cry out for the blood of armies. Like, there's just no way you can be an American and not be pro-war, unfortunately, right now. So I wanted to find something. I couldn't do anything about people getting sent to war. I did lots of, my partner can attest, I did lots of protests, I did lots of essays, letters to the editor, signs, I did everything these 10 little fingers could muster. And it just was not fulfilling. It was not satisfying. My friends were still dying. And I needed something, once again, concrete and tangible I could give somebody and say, this is a way forward. So once again, how can we provide a just transition for service members to redeploy into their communities as civilian leaders? How do we take people who have all these issues going on with them and actually have post-traumatic growth, actually have where they can take these experiences come to peace with them and then move forward to help others do the same. Because that's why when veterans get out of the military, like they went from being in charge of multi-million-dollar equipment, being in charge of human lives, being in charge of all these different things and having all this importance and all this identity, to when I got out and was sleeping in my car and I asked my parents for help, they told me if I got a job at the gas station, I can get my food stamps faster. Like that's how they want me to pull myself up by my bootstraps. And I did everything from, I worked at a doggy daycare for a year. What else? I was a pizza chef. I was, the Uber driver. I tried everything. And once again, it was not fulfilling work. I was being yelled at by people, 10 years younger who were making more money than me and doing the wrong things that I could not abide by as someone who had been in the military. So I needed whatever we tell veterans to do, it needs to be tangible. Like as much as I appreciate Starbucks hiring 10,000 vets, I have been the barista behind the counter having to get orders before, and it is not pleasant most days. So once again, if I'm going to tell veterans this is the way to move forward, I want it to be something that they can actually repurpose themselves, feel important, and actually be important to their communities because they know they're doing something good for them. And once again, becoming a farmer is going from being a destroyer to being a creator. To me, the opposite of war is not peace, it is creation. It is actually going from a mindset where you take and you destroy and you dominate, and you go into a mindset where you cultivate and create and bring new things into life. So of all things, why permaculture? And so what is permaculture? Does anybody know? That's really good. I like that. That's a good explanation. But yeah, permaculture is a mix of two words. It was developed in the 70s by two Australians. And once again, this isn't anything new. We are just repurposing and condensing indigenous knowledge and Aboriginal knowledge and knowledge that's been around. Basically, everything we did in farming before the industrial or the agricultural revolution with artificial fertilizer, like what we just used to call farming is what we call organic and sustainable regenerative farming now. So permaculture is basically permanent and culture blended together. And what that helps is like they said, taking plant communities and growing them together in these guilds, creating your own, basically making an ecosystem out of your property. Instead of just having 40 acres where everything is soybeans, you're growing 40 acres where you have a food forest and where you have your pigs eating all the roots out of your fields so you don't have to till, and you have the peacocks eating your ticks so you don't have to spray, and all these kind of different things, basically making a whole ecosystem and putting the human being back into it. So, and another word for this that's been caught on more in America is regenerative agriculture, where industrial agriculture, you'll have, you're adding fertilizers every year, you're giving your animals and plants antibiotics, you're spraying with Roundup, you're having to keep these huge monocrops sustainable and viable, and as we've seen, it's not really either, given all the pesticide runoff and all the E. coli scares on the romaine that we've had. How do you think that E. coli gets on the romaine? It's because there's runoff from all these other farms being sprayed onto your vegetables and things. So another way, it's like, once again, using permaculture, regenerative agriculture, you're rebuilding the land. The property that we have up north, we were donated. It's 120 acres of glacial outwash prairie land that was also an industrial slaughterhouse and the place where they made all the lucky rabbit's feet for the rabbits who weren't so lucky. All the remnants are now in the back of our pond somewhere. And this land has just been laying fallow for 10 years, and it's prime farmland right on exit mile marker 92 on I-5. And with permaculture, basically the people who owned it couldn't do anything with it. It had wetlands on it. It has prairie soils that have pocket gopher populations, which are endangered. As far as they were concerned, this was not viable for capitalism. This was not viable for them. They were chewing their arm off to get rid of it. And in the permaculture mindset, we can take this 120 acres, rehab it, and put it back into the system because I believe we've lost about 90% of our farmland to development at this point in America. So this is what we're doing. We're not only cultivating people, we're cultivating the land and putting something back into the community that will last a lot longer than any of us. So go ahead. And there's science behind it. So once again, the USDA data shows that even though rural America makes up 17% of the country's population, it accounts for 40% of the service members, sorry for the binary stuff, 40% of the service members who served in the military. Farming and ranching is facing an aging population that has sparked concerns about who will take over many of the family farms across Iowa and other parts of the United States. Mostly any place that has farmers. There's no succession plan in place. You have all these people who are keeping the family farm. They've gone into it for generations, but their kids are like, I don't want to do this anymore. You're not making any money. It's a lot of, if you know anything about the farming in America right now, veteran suicide is at a rate of 22 a day. Farmers are twice the rate of that right now. So between the big industrial crops have been bought out by Monsanto and Cargill and everybody like that. They are not able to, basically the farmers are having to take out huge loans to keep up. When the farmers can't pay back these loans, they end up basically having nowhere, they can't get any more money, they don't have any more equity, and they kill themselves. And it's real sad right now. So if we can have it to where younger veterans are coming in, learning from the farmers who already have property, because once again, a young veteran, they have all this knowledge, or they have all this energy, and they lack the expertise, and they lack the access to resources, and they lack the equity to actually start their own multi-acre operations. So what we've been doing and what other groups have been doing, and like I said, American agriculture needs veterans as much as veterans need American agriculture. So only 1% of the American budget right now is spent on agriculture. Only 1% of the population serves as a veteran, and less than 1% of Americans actually farm. So basically we have this intersection, this Venn diagram, this like 1% of 1% that can actually help each other and help establish a better system than what we have now. Okay. And once again, a new purpose through permaculture means a new identity. And why does a new identity matter to veterans? Because once again, once we get out, there's this persona. I saw the picture online that was identifying this, and it was of an Asian American soldier, a woman, and I wanted to put that on there because when people think of veterans, and you close your eyes and you just had to think of veteran, what do you think about? You know, white dude, tall, 6'4", blonde hair, blue eyes, with the scary Punisher skull on his chest, and like all the rest of it. And that's only 40% of the military, really, honest to God. Like if we were going to go with dynamics or numbers, the rest of it are there's women, there's people of color, there's religions other than Christian, like everything from Wiccan to Hindu. There's all these different things. And if you don't fit into that American Legion Veterans of Foreign Wars mold, like people don't acknowledge you. You are an underserved and underrepresented veteran. Eyes turned out or don't ask, don't tell. So like it's really hard for me to be in any of those spaces where all the homophobia and stuff still exists pretty hardcore. Female veterans, suicide and homelessness is the #1 spike right now because women veterans get out and they can't even get into a shelter and keep their kids with them at the same time. They would rather sleep on the street than not be with their kids. And you can have, there's male veteran shelters in Portland where you can bring your dog, but a woman veteran can't bring their kid. So, and a lot of the veterans who are experiencing suicide right now, it's not just post 9/11 people, it's a lot of the Vietnam veterans who came back, and already more veterans, Vietnam veterans killed themselves of suicide than those who died in war. And now when they see all this stuff on the news and all these people redeploying and going back and all these things happening, like people get activated, they get triggered again, and it leads to more suicide stuff, especially now that the VA is cutting back on the Percocet and all oxycodones and all the other painkillers that help to distribute. A lot of people just literally can't take the pain anymore, and they're ending it. So, and onto that note, all 69% of all veteran suicide deaths are resulted from a firearm injury, from firearms. So once again, like wherever you land on that, it's basically veterans have access to these weapons, they know how to use them, they're not scared of them, and I want to give people more options before they decide that killing themselves is the only one, to be perfectly honest with you. I want people to have an identity where they're not the trigger puller anymore, where they're not just the bullet sponge, where they're not just the grunt in the back and the rear with the gear. No, they are the farmer. They are the person that makes sure that the kids have fresh eggs and milk. They are the person that makes sure that kids know what a radish looks like when it comes out of the ground, They get to like I saw a kid who saw broccoli for the first time and it blew their mind. Like it gives them, once again, it's something very tangible and very concrete that you already have the boots, you already have, you're used to wearing a uniform every day, you're used to long hours, and especially with the symptoms of PTSD like hypervigilance and stuff like that, like it's good to always have something to focus on. You need to know if you have a hole in your gate, you need to know if your sheep are getting out, you need to know who's on the property and who's not. So a lot of things that would not work in a regular work environment for people, the farm helps provide. Good. And we have a program right now called the Vets Cafe Permaculture Design Course, where basically that's our executive director right there is Destin Dennison. He got out of the military in 1989 with a training accident. A round went off over, a 50 cal round went off over his head because they were supposed to be like, don't fire. And the guy thought, okay, fire. And he ended up bleeding a little bit of stuff out his ears and things and had a TBI before they really knew what TBI was. And he has spent the last 12 years of his life basically homeless because of the VA. He got an honorable discharge, but nobody recognized his TBI. So they're like, oh, you're bipolar. Oh, you have anxiety disorder. Oh, you have depression. Oh, you have this. But no one actually just wants to say, oh, we've shot a thing over your head. You have TBI now. So he's been fighting the VA for the past 30 years just to try to get his injuries recognized. But in the meantime, like he literally went from having a degree from Evergreen College in agriculture, a master's, to having to reteach himself how to read using Cat in the Hat books. So like he has decided to take this path of, he could go forth and be a permaculture designer and do things, but he needs to have the protected environment. He needs to be able to take sick days. He needs to be able to go to appointments. He needs to be able to actually do self-care. And because of that, he's donating his work to Veterans Ecological Trades Collective, which is the nonprofit. And through his permaculture design course, he takes guys and women and everybody else in between that has, you know, we know the Army values, we know all these different structures, there's all these different principles and ethics in the military, but now we can take that, and in permaculture there's 12 principles and there's 3 ethics. If you know your zodiac, you can learn the 12 principles. You know, the ethics are care for the planet, care for each other, and sharing your resources. Like, basically, if people can get onto these ethics and use them as tools in their lives, like, it can only go up from there. Like, the rules are things like obtain a yield, whether it's you're growing stuff in your yard or you're getting satisfaction from something you're doing. Capture energy, which is like, you know, storing things in batteries or just making sure that you have enough energy within you to go out and do your work. Like, it helps you, it gives you rules and guidelines that are very simple that you can take with you to make decisions in the real world and in your personal life that only move you forward as a human being instead of backtracking into, you know, denial and self-medication and stuff like that. You're actually moving forward, like, how does this actually help me, the planet, and others around me? Like, that is your mindset in permaculture. The personal resilience through community involvement. Once again, you go from being isolated and withdrawn and not having, you know, I have nothing to offer the world. All I did was, you know, pull triggers. All I did was kill people. It's like, no, actually, like, that's something you did, and now you can move forward. And if, like, I worked in the pharmacy, the worst I did was give people pills that they used to commit suicide with, and that's tough. That's a lot of moral injury for me. But now I'm like, I can help somebody grow their own chamomile. I can help somebody grow their own, you know, I can show them all these herbal plants that will work just as well as all the stuff the VA tried to cram down their throat. You know, like, this is me healing. Like, this is me giving back to my community where I felt before I broke the Hippocratic Oath of doing harm to people. Now I can actually give back, and whether it's helping the food bank, you know, get food from our raised beds, to, like I said, helping a veteran figure out what herbal regimen works for them. Like, that is how I give back. That is my personal resilience. That is how I know that I'm going to be able to get through today, tomorrow, and the next day, because I have this community that I depend on and they count on me, you know? And I say that as a 100% service-connected veteran. So, and then while we're all together, because we are the only veteran-run permaculture group in the United States, as far as I can tell so right now, there's lots of other farming groups. We're the only ones that focus 100% on permaculture. We want people to have because we think about holistic care, we want people to access all the veteran service organizations and the programs available to them. There's a saying that veterans right now are starving at the buffet because there's so many different things out there to help them, but they have no idea how to actually talk to people or access them or follow up or stuff like that. So we give people like a battle buddy, like a personal guide that'll help to get them to these appointments, help them sign all the paperwork, fill out the forms. And it sounds really banal, but like when you have, I have a guy who he was a human resources person in Iraq, and his job was to fill out all the paperwork for people going home in body bags and things and making sure they got to the right place. And now he can't even go to the DMV and fill out forms by himself. And if he was out in the world, everyone would just tell him, like, you know, get over it, do this. Like, what do you mean you can't fill out your own form? And here we just help him do it. Here, and that way now he went from 30% disability to 100%, and he's able to take care of his wife and himself. You know, just that little extra bit of care and knowing, like, hey, I'm going through this too. I know how to help you get out of it. So good. And we're not alone, thank goodness. There are other groups known as, like, the Farmer Veteran Coalition has been instrumental in promoting a new nationwide labeling program known as the Homegrown by Heroes. It was made by Mitch McConnell, but we're not going to hold it against it. It's a cool logo, right? Basically, anyone, if you have a business that's over 51% veteran owned, you can use this sticker, and it lets people automatically know that it's a veteran business and such like that. And its marketing program has helped out immensely. The Farmer Veteran Coalition started off in California with Michael O'Gorman, who had a daughter who survived the trade center and a son who joined the Army right afterward, after 9/11. And he grew up as an anti-war protester. He grew up in California helping organic farms get started. And he was a pro-peace kind of guy, but then he realized that you know, in the Bible, I'm sorry to bring that up here, but in the Bible, it says, you know, the whole thing, Isaiah, swords to plowshares. Like, they were before Michael O'Gorman and the Farmer Veteran Coalition, like, everybody said it, but nobody was doing it. Like, nobody was putting veterans into farming programs like this. And because he's teamed up with the USDA and the Department of Agriculture and stuff like that, they went from 0 members in 2007 to now 19,000 all across the country. So, and we are proud to be part of the Washington State chapter of it. Good. So, if you only get one take, I talk really fast. Sorry how this goes, but if you only take away one thing, is permaculture is a just transition. I didn't explain what that means. So, a just transition is where basically you're one thing and then you get to be something else that's just as good. Like when I learned about it, I was in the environmental movement, and I had just gotten done with the Finnica action at the St. John's Bridge. And basically, we wanted to have a just transition for the people working for the Finnica and like BP and stuff like that to go into green energy jobs, to go into a Green New Deal, to go into putting in solar panels or something that would make them just as much money, if not more, and actually be a job that they could take forward with their families. Because what happened here in Oregon with the spotted owl, right? Like all the people, environmentalists came in, we said we got to save the spotted owl. All the people are like, what about our jobs? We're like, screw you, we like the owl. And then we've made enemies for the rest of our lives. And with this way, so a just transition is like we want people to stop, or we want people to be able to get out of the military mindset and get out, and not have to be put into these menial, unpurposeful jobs, and bring them into something that they get to, even if they were a ranger, you know, special forces doing all the hoa shit, then they could actually move forward and be someone that, you know, now there's a guy ranger who does cattle, and it says it brings him just as much joy raising his cattle as it did being an Army Ranger. How does it work? I don't know. It's magic as far as I'm concerned. But that is why I say just transition, because I don't want to just like take someone from being in the military and make them a farmer. Now you're a neo-surf. Now you're a farmer. Go and grow your carrot shoe. Like, no, I want them to feel just as good as the day they join the military as they are farming, you know? And so permaculture is a just transition that bridges the military-civilian divide and brings our warriors all the way home. It doesn't leave them at the VA. It doesn't leave them sitting with their bottle of Jack Daniels. It brings them all the way home. So. And this is our group right now. It's pretty fun. We have dogs. We have people from all over, veterans of all eras, branches, kids of veterans, the whole thing. Like one of the other principles of permaculture is integrate rather than segregate. So once again, we're bringing the veterans into their community by showing them all the people that that care about what they're doing. So this is what we have going on. I appreciate your time, and that's my presentation.
Thank you for coming. That was really interesting.
Thank you.
It's great that the VA follows up, and you know, it's kind of like no child left behind, no veteran left behind.
They're trying.
But I'm a veteran. I know Gus Frederick. Was he giving this presentation, or was that him in the picture?
I honestly don't know who that is. So
I mean, I thought I saw him in one of the pictures there.
Okay, good.
Yeah, he's a veteran from Silverton, and he has done a lot for the Silverton community, and we've worked on biological projects together over the years. But you know, it's really interesting. Are you a full-time veteran advocate?
I get my 100% disability, so I'm a 100% full-time volunteer advocate.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Uncle Sam pays me. Yeah.
I've always had a hard time saying thank you for your service, because I'm very much of a pacifist, and it was hard for me to say that phrase, but now I can say truly thank you for your service and the good work that you're doing. I'm involved with an organization called VetRest that does somewhat similar work, and I'll talk to you about that afterwards. I think you guys are a little more organized than they are. But my question is, can people come visit the property, or how does that process work?
Yes, so this is our second year of being an active farm. Starting in April, we're going to have public events where people can come out and things. And if you wanted to come out and just see it, then you shoot us an email. We have a caretaker on site 24/7, so we'll make arrangements. Yeah.
Wouldn't this be a very positive thing for people coming out of prison as well, formerly incarcerated?
And there's a lot of veterans in prison too, so that we want to have that overlap, so we can do that outreach. That's the outreach you want to be doing, because I believe right now in Oregon State, like 1 in 10 people in prison right now is a veteran. So that's one of the populations you want to hit.
I'm also involved with the Oregon Sustainable Agriculture Land Trust, and we have different agricultural properties, about 10 of them. And one of our issues that we advocate for is trying to get people who are interested in farming access to land. So I'm inspired by you being able to get a 120-acre property. How did that happen?
Oh, through a lot of luck and a lot of things. Basically, Fremont Dock up north, like I said, they got the property from it had gone from being a slaughterhouse to a compost facility that was owned by a veteran. He decided that he wanted to take the money from compost and use it to build a R&R center where he was going to take people out fishing and camping and stuff like that. He was a Vietnam vet that ended up getting pancreatic cancer real quick, fast, and in a hurry, probably from Agent Orange exposure, and ended up dying super fast. So basically, the place sat fallow for 10 years. It got completely stripped out, like all the way to the freeway. Our copper is gone. Like any engines that were there, anything, like there's not a single light bulb or window that wasn't broken. Like it was just completely the graffiti everywhere. And then, like I said, this woman was trying to get rid of it, and we got the call saying, like, here's 120 acres. And one of the reasons she was going to give it to us is because our goal with this endeavor, like the reason we have the nonprofit, is that we want to make this into a trust, where basically we are going to find a collective of veterans this year that want to work as a cooperative, so that when they buy their seed or whatever they need, like all the resources are pooled together no matter what their business is on the property. Because it's permaculture, you can't just like plant, like you said, you can't just plant annuals and call it good. You need to plant things that come back every year. So we want to make it to where we make a land trust where the people can make their farming cooperative, and then once they have enough money to buy the land from us, they buy the property from us for a very low rate, and we take that money and buy the next farm. We want to have like a whole network of these things up and down the I-5. Eventually Alaska, Hawaii, make it a whole ring of fire. So
it's interesting how I like how you take the military mindset and make it work in their favor. One of the things I found interesting about the homeless situation was that there are some homeless camps that are popping up where they have just, very simple accommodations, but they're for military veterans, and they're run by, a master sergeant or something like that. But they function apparently fairly well because the master sergeant knows the system, and so do the homeless people, and so they respect that system. And it works really well for those people.
The Army teaches you to be homeless really well. Like they,
well, but if you
know how to set up a camp.
But if it's run and managed by a master sergeant, then the homeless people understand his language and his system, and it works actually pretty well. So I'm curious. So that's a homeless example. You're showing a transition in permaculture. What other ways have you found systems that have transitioned the military mindset well into programs?
Good question. I have seen, especially, there are camps here that are have tiny home camps for veterans that are run very well. That is a lot of people, there is on the Heritage Farm on 78th Street in Vancouver has a program where homeless vets are learning how to farm and do stuff like that. As far as what helps people transition, I honestly picked permaculture because how do I put this? So when I was doing my first research, the veterans farm in Florida that I was modeling after had a 75% success rate, meaning that their people got jobs, talked to their families again, got enrolled in school, stuff like they moved forward with their lives. When I looked at VA programs, like everything from the CBT, the cognitive behavior therapy and exposure therapy and stuff like that, the VA only had a 20% success rate, and it didn't say what that meant. So what was the other 80%, So as far as what actually helps people complete that transition all the way, like I know people working with horses have really good things, but once again, as far as I'm concerned, that's more permaculture stuff. Just anything that actually makes people have that new identity, whether it's helping kids or helping animals or just repurposing themselves from being the destroyer to a creator kind of mindset.
Again, thank you for your wonderful work. And the Vietnam War was so much a part of my youth. And I have kept in contact with many guys that fought in that war, and they never really recovered 100%. No, they were triggers, and so the good work you're doing, I really do appreciate it. Thank you. Could you give me an idea? What would be how does a veteran? What happens when they sign up with your organization? How do they? What are their classes? Just what do they do?
So basically, once they become a member of the Veterans Ecological Trades Collective, once again, a lot of people, they're not ready at the place to go farming yet. We have 120 acres. So we give them a sandbox to play in. If you want to have a raised bed, or you want to try growing lavender, or you want to try growing hemp, go try it. You have a place to do it. We work out work trade hours. So if you want to have this raised bed, you're here weeding, 2 hours a week, something like that. Like, once again, things people can do. We're not making it unattainable. We have recreation on the farm. We have 2 ponds that people can be going fishing in soon. They can bring their horses and go riding. They can bring their dogs and stuff like that. Like, we give them a place to reconnect with the land and do sanctuary stuff. We will have workshops throughout the year for members that are 0 cost. Like everything from how to build a cob oven to how to make a rocket stove, how to make an herb spiral, how to do hugelculture, just like all the different farming things. We are now part of the Veterans in Agriculture grant from the USDA and the VA Puget Sound. So we'll be giving like suicide awareness trainings and different mental health provider trainings and stuff to the rural areas, because once, as the slide showed, like even though only 17% of people in the military are, how did that go? Basically, there's a lot of rural representation in the military, and we want to be able to reach those people that live in Rochester and Mossy Rock and Castle Rock and Tenino, and that can't get up to Olympia, Tacoma, Seattle for these services. So basically, we give people community. It can be everything from learning how to do something to we do a veteran council where people just come for peer support. Like, basically, we're trying to be a dual power to the American Legion and the Veterans of Foreign Wars. Like, we don't have a bar. Like, we just people actually come in and work with their hands and talk about their stuff, Can they live on the farm? We're working on it. We need to have more permanent. We don't have power and water yet. So we have some people living in very primitive conditions, but we want to have like an actual longhouse eventually where people can actually bunk up and have a nice time. Oh, we also have the so once people go through all these workshops, we have the permaculture design course that takes place in the summer. It's 2 weeks long. Food is provided, camping is provided, and people learn. Like, that's when they actually can get design. Basically, it's like a $2,000 degree or certificate that if you got it down here in Portland or somewhere else. But they can take this permaculture design certificate at the end, and they can go be a consultant or use it at their own property. But they can use this credential to make their own job or their own business.
I guess that kind of answers my question a little bit. Was how did you learn about permaculture and how did you get really interested in that?
Yeah, I was looking for because I have PTSD, I have dysthymia, I have a lot of ailments from the military, my anxiety, depression things. So I'm like, what actually works? Because I'd done everything else, And once again, it was when I found veterans in farming, they had these super high success rates versus all these VA programs that didn't. And if you know anything about exposure therapy, basically I would have to be in a room with all of my triggers for like 6 months until they just subsided. And that's not good for a lot of people. So that's why it only has a 20% success rate. So I wanted to give people options that weren't horrifying. And that's permaculture seems to be the best way.
I've always wanted to have a block away and down to the Forest Park. Forest Park is in dreadful condition, and I believe that if there was a building right there at the beginning for people who normally would be homeless, etc., that they could work in the park and earn a little overnight or whatever. It needs help. And something like yours, where it actually is a permaculture, would be wonderful for vets, I think, that are somewhat homeless or don't want to be trapped inside.
No, as far as Forest Park goes, it's near and dear in my heart because veterans have been documented living there for like years in the woods. And there's only one park ranger for that entire 5,000 acres. And imagine how much overlap and how much help could be done if there was actually some funding for that. Like, that's a dream in my heart. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.